Okay, a call to order the Yamhill County Board of Commissioners formal session for June 1st, 2023. It is 10 o'clock in the morning. And Commissioner Johnston, would you please lead us in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and just as a reminder, we are having an executive session immediately following the meeting today. Item C is our calendar session. Commissioners, anything to add to the calendar? No? Okay. Item D is public comment. This time period is reserved for public comment on any topic other than an agenda item, a quasi judicial land use matter, or a topic scheduled for a public hearing. And it looks like we have one public comment today, former Commissioner Dennis Gex. Welcome, Dennis.
To the board. My understanding that your statement regarding measure 36-227 released on May 10th, 2023, you may not be able to accept certification of measure 36-227 due to the errors in the documents submitted by the city of McMinnville. If the 250 tax lots involved in the rural district are not included in the new district, there are major concerns if property will be taxed, able to obtain fire services, or property insurance. And as a side note there, I talked to my son last night, who's been an insurance agent up in the Tigard area for over 25 years now. And when I asked him about this, if this would happen to my property and it was outside those limits, his input was, Dad, there is no way to know. That thing could go so many different directions depending on the insurance agent that's involved, the company, what their policy is. He did share one thing. He said for every dollar that's currently coming in, $1.12 is going out in claims, and they're getting very, very tough and writing new claims, and in some cases even rewriting. Say that's a side point. I want you to know that you have my full support in taking whatever action necessary to comply with the law. And that's something that I really want to push hard in this discussion this morning. You have a process to go through and do it to the very best of your ability with the input of your staff and the legalities that are involved, because this is a briar patch the way it's heading now. And you've got a system here that can support you and use it. At no time have I considered the improvement in fire and ambulance service as a political venture, and it should not be now. Just do the job and do the job to the best of your ability. Throughout this entire process, my involvement has been viewed as a point of service by my family. We're the same $1.50 per thousand as a fire department with the city, along with a 50-cent levy update for equipment and facility, could get the same job done for 50 cents that now was passed on the ballot for $2. My background as a professional change agent, management engineer, gives me the ability. And what I'm doing here now is saying, if based on law, you cannot approve this levy, I'm offering you an alternative. Now, you don't have to this isn't anything you can do. This is something you can pass on to the city of McMinnville, but it is an alternative. My background as a professional change agent, management engineer, gives me the ability within a 3-month time period with the proper team of volunteers who want to make this work to present a plan of action and budget to the city. I would use my talents to give the voters an equal result of improvement for the fire and ambulance service at 25% of the $2 cost. Since authorization for this team would come from the city of McMinnville, I would request a one-time meeting with the decision makers to come to a mutual agreement on how to proceed and how. Criteria for this team would include commitment of the city to reserve $1.50 for the fire department and intent to honor that value to the best of their ability in the future. The promise to put in the ballot as soon as possible a 10-year levy in the amount of 50 cents for property and fire equipment upgrade, the same as value as proposed for the fire district. The McMinnville Rural District would also be requested to do the same. And I would be willing to go to that district since I'm in it and make that particular request. The appointment of a 6 to 8 member task team under my leadership with the assignment of a task plan budget for the McMinnville Fire Department. The team would include myself, a member of the city council, a member of fire department management, a member of fire department union, a member of the elected new district board, and someone well-versed in the fire department budget process. Only volunteers would be able to vote on issues on this team during the process. Concepts of zero-based budgeting and interest-based negotiation would be used. We would desire managerial overhead that is lean with emphasis on balanced crewing and maximizing response time for fire and ambulance. Staff and location support would be provided by the city. A major goal would be to have one substation in place 12 months after levy approval by the public and a second in planning. We would ask local public organizations, city, county, school district, community college to donate land and zoning requirements for the substations from existing properties already owned by the taxpayers. As a side note, my grandfather was a volunteer fire chief for 12 years when I was young. My father and my uncle were volunteer firefighters in Monroe, Wisconsin. The volunteer was looked at as special, as they were here in the fire chief Jerry Smith time. That's the time I remember the most because I was most involved at that point. I would really like to get back to that kind of atmosphere here in McMinnville with an appropriate balance of paid volunteer staff providing well-managed service. And that's my input. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Dennis. Commissioners, any questions?
I do. Thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your input on this. Have you spoken to the city at all?
Okay, you're going to have to help me here.
Okay. Have you spoken to the city about anything you shared here today?
No, I spoke only to, I'm only giving this to you, and this is the first appearance of it in form, because frankly, you're in the hot seat. The city wants its $1.50 for other purposes. The fire unions and all these other folks that are involved, they want their, like Tualatin Valley fire situation developed here. There was a lot of money went into that election, and there was a lot of politics involved. You're in the briar patch on this one, the way you go, and that's why. You notice my first point was stay just as steady as you can with the law, what it is that it allows you to do and not to do, and take the politics and put them aside on this. That's why you were elected. You don't get many of these during the time you're a county commissioner. I had about 4. But when they come along, that's when your metal's tested. And that's where you are right now.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Comments, questions? No. Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Have one more message for you. My wife and I, we've worked with our Vacation Bible School for years. We work with the kids when they come in and all, and I've got all kinds of Vacation Bible School shirts. And I decided I was going to wear this one today because it just seemed to fit.
Thank you.
Stand strong.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis. Okay. Any further public comment? And if you're online, please raise your virtual hand. Ms. B. Noelle.
Yes.
Okay, seeing none, we will move on to our work session, which is a presentation by TBFNR for the state of the district. We are welcoming Chief Vale and Chief Olvin. Back up for questions.
She is certainly my support for sure. You caught on to that quickly. Let me share my screen here. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Chair Bershauer, Commissioner Johnston, Commissioner Starrett, thank you for having me. My name is Patrick Fail. I'm the Assistant Chief for Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue. With me here today is our Community Services Chief, Cassandra Olvin, and she is my right-hand person day in, day out. Certainly supports the heck out of me. As we were putting this presentation together, we realized how many new people we had in position, leadership position at Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue, and how many new elected partners we had out there who may not totally understand our mission as an organization. We're really here to create safer communities through prevention, preparedness, and effective emergency response. To meet this goal, we recently just completed a new strategic plan that'll take us out to 2028 with the main objectives of health of our organization and the people that are in it, increased performance throughout the communities that we serve, and fully evaluating opportunities with public and private partners. This simple document is really the guidelines for all leaders within the organization to formulate their tactics for how we move forward for their particular divisions, but also to align their budgets and be fiscally responsible and stay on task. Particularly related to the strategic plan of health and performance, staffing and succession planning is at the top of our list. We've had a significant amount of attrition of 600 employees in and out of the organization. That's our total employees, but you can imagine with retirements, that's quite a few for overlay of 600 employees. As of April 2023, 63% of our upper level managers, battalion chiefs, and captains are either on a work back or have retired. In the past year, we've conducted promotional processes for lieutenant, captains, battalion chiefs, a district chief, and my position as assistant chief, with over 60 individuals being promoted to new leadership positions. That's pretty significant. Like cities and fire departments around the nation, we too are struggling to attract talent. We've expanded our recruitment efforts to include social media blitz, mass media advertisement, and outreach to attract more diverse candidates. Yes, last night I attended a graduation of 22 new recruits, and in August, this coming August, we will have another recruit academy of, I believe, 24. That pattern will continue for years to come as we work through a significant number of retirements. Kind of demonstrate some of the example of content we're pushing on Instagram and TikTok. We've really leveraged the youngest members in the organization to drive content. We've decentralized in this area, and this is just an example of what they are putting out there, and I can say it is absolutely working.
Oh, hey, you're already here. We don't have a lot of time. We've got a fire in our district, so come with me. Here's what you need to know. Starting December 2nd, Tualatin Valley is hiring firefighter EMTs and firefighter paramedics. We're a big district, so there's a lot of opportunities. We're looking for compassionate and driven individuals to better serve our communities. If that's you, start getting your paperwork together. That includes your fire team scores, CPAT, and any licenses. For more information, check out our website. And we're putting on new videos, but right now I gotta go.
I'm not sure if you could all hear that, but essentially what she was doing was outlining in a really
Okay,
savvy
you're
way
already here.
of
We don't
all
have a
the
lot of
hurdles that you
time.
have
We've
to
got
get
a fire in
through
our
in order
district,
to
so come with
prepare.
me. Here's what you need to know.
So it, like I mentioned, it is working. We are attracting the talent, but we've had to change what we're doing to attract that talent. As for a bond update, voters approved a bond in 2021. We saw no increase in tax rate since retiring that old debt from our previous bond. Right now, we're focused on the location of Station 6-2, which is in the Aloha Beaverton area. We've held community meetings in March and working through land use with the county. Our training center is also up for some analysis for needs. It has not been improved since 1989, and we are pumping recruits and crews through this constantly and really have been through that since that time. And it's in need, desperate need of some new props, new buildings, new administration facilities. And so we're going through that analysis right now. Our next priorities are a rebuild of the King City Fire Station, remodel of Beaverton Station, main station, and both of our Newburgh stations are up for remodel. Next slide. We're a data-informed organization. I say that very particularly. We used to say that we're a data-driven organization, but you really only get a two-dimension look of what's going on. This is an example of your Yamhill County stations and the number of incidents and types of incidents they have run. We take this information and we combine it with on-the-ground intelligence to understand what is actually occurring in that location. If we start on the left-hand side of the slide, you'll see roughly 5,000 total incidents. That's for Yamhill County proper. That is not the total number of incidents for Station 20 and 21 in Newburgh. Their incident count is higher than that because they also bleed into Washington County as backup units, especially for Sherwood and for King City, just as Sherwood stations, King City station, and Tigard stations bleed into Newburgh. Number of these incidents are also mutual aid response to our partners within Yamhill County, particularly McMinnville Fire. If we start on the left-hand side under the heading of EMS, this is really industry typical. 73% of all responses are EMS related, around 8 to 10% are fire, hazard, service, and good intent calls. Pretty typical. If you look down towards the bottom of the page, hour of day and day of week, I always like to pay attention of these. So it looks like in Yamhill County, you want to stay away from Fridays, Wednesdays, and Mondays at around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So. I mentioned we have a tremendous amount of new leadership within the organization. And if we do that right and we've developed them correctly, what's going to come with that is innovation. And we're certainly seeing that. We've improved our ability to capture medical information on scene through a program called 2IS, which is connected throughout the hospital system. And we believe that it is improving patient outcomes. It also allows us to own our data and to fully leverage that for performance. We've improved our ability to monitor critical medication supplies. This is exciting. We've deployed Lucas devices on all of our transport units. These are hands-free CPR devices. If you've ever witnessed this type of call, they can seem somewhat chaotic as our team is working. This one single device has calmed the scene down, just from the standpoint that you're not hearing somebody count out CPR. And recently we had our first Lucas device survivor that we celebrated earlier in the year at our cardiac arrest survivor breakfast. Something to know, if you have a witness cardiac arrest in our service area, anywhere in Tualatin Valley Fire and Rescue service area, your chance of survival is 43%. Now that's neurologically intact walking out of the hospital. That is one of the highest save rates in the nation. And we accomplish that. Our crews are trained to be like a pit crew. Everything from where they place themselves on the scene to where they place their kits. And these Lucas CPR devices are just a measure of that. When I started in EMS 25 years ago, it was pretty rare to save anyone from cardiac arrest. And now that we're at 43% witnessed cardiac arrest save rate, to me, it's phenomenal. So,
Chief, is that So you said the impact to maybe the family that's watching is pretty significant, but it's also, I assume it's also for fatigue
Yeah,
and just
If
and triaging.
we
the
try to
patient.
really stabilize the patient on scene before we move them. And so our crews can do CPR for 20, 30, 40 minutes. And they do get fatigued. It also helps in transport. We were never really able to do perfect CPR. This machine does perfect CPR. So if you can imagine you're in the back of a rig moving around as it's going down the road, this machine doesn't move around. It's hooked there. So it's certainly
Gotcha.
improving outcomes. Yeah. Thank you for the question. I mentioned health and our overall priorities for the organization through our strategic plan. We have partnered with several private companies to aid us in the health of our employees. Last year, we started a pilot with Apple to work with them and develop a product called Shield. Some of our firefighters, myself included, we wear Apple Watches, and it tracks our stress level, our heart rates, our sleeping patterns, and gives us a daily overall picture of our diet, our physical and mental health to bring awareness to those individuals. The technology is in its infancy. We believe that this partnership with Apple will expand into other areas to be able to monitor the health of our firefighters. We're also working with a company called Emergent, and we use this to monitor our emergency scenes, improve our inspections, and our apparatus tracking. We're hopeful for this that it's going to provide efficiencies throughout our processes, but we've also partnered close enough that we have a prospect of revenue sharing after a national launch. As with any service-oriented district, we train a lot. You're going to see up on the upper left-hand side, 101,000 hours, 102,000 hours of total training that our personnel go through. 80,000 of that is really leadership development and focused on low-frequency, high-risk incidents, such as auto extrication, commercial fires, residential fires, hazmat, and technical rescue. You may be wondering why our EMS hours are lower than everything else when 73% of all responses are EMS related. The reason for that is our crews run roughly 65,000 calls a year. They're really good at EMS, and they see a lot of the same calls over and over: headache, abdominal pain, falls, dizziness. Those 21,000 hours are really focused on the high risk, low frequency calls. And those are really our cardiac arrest, our strokes, our heart attacks, our traumas, and pediatric calls. And so we try to take their training and really focus it on those high risk incidents for EMS. As you're all aware, we have an ambulance service area. We have a portion of the Yamhill County ambulance service area. We had 760 interfacility transports from Yamhill County. That's Willamette Valley Medical Center, but also Newburgh, Providence. And we transported approximately 2,500 patients out of this ASA in 2022. Give you a real quick update on Washington County EMS. That ASA contract with the private provider within Washington County was an evergreen contract. This last year, the county commissioners voted to open that contract for RFP. It went out to bid. We have been struggling within Washington County with ambulance level 0. What that means is that at any given time, there are no available ambulances within Washington County when an ambulance level 0 is called from the private provider. Washington County fire departments have stood up and answered the call. We added additional units along with Hillsborough Fire, Western Washington County, and Banks, but it still wasn't perfect. We were partners in working with the county to inform the RFP process, which has performance metrics not only for the private provider, but also fire departments as well. And we're proud to say that that did go out, and AMR was awarded the bid. They are currently in contract negotiations with the county. we will have a new provider sometime here in the late summer, early fall within Washington County. This is near and dear to my heart. I mentioned in our mission statement that we're committed to reducing risk and educating our communities. As part of our mission, our deputy fire marshals and inspectors performed 3,000 inspections of commercial buildings in 2022. Our fire investigators influenced state and national building codes and associations for safer construction and building features. We have conducted multifamily housing and landlord training sessions twice per year, and recently that just went online so we can reach even more landlords and apartment managers. For years, we've been teaching hands-only CPR to thousands of students, and that has continued. That's been wildly successful to get people at a young age understanding the importance of hands-only CPR. Post major fire, we perform fire knock and talks to educate our residents when they're most impressionable, and we've really hit those hard this last year. And just for your awareness, we host an annual summit for hundreds of scouts to learn about safety every year. In this slide, lower portion of the slide, the large group of people, that is a partnership that we have with Red Cross to go into communities. We knock on their doors. We ask them if we can give them a fire safety assessment. We put up new smoke detectors. We leave them with some information, and it certainly has impacted some of the communities that have chosen to do that.
Chief, did I also read that you guys are doing fentanyl education?
We
that
are
part of-
doing some fentanyl education at a regional level with our other partner agencies, yes. Our TVF&R's board of directors is expected to refer a levy to the May 2024 ballot. Our existing 45 cents per thousand expires in June of 2025. That funds firefighters, paramedics, some support personnel, and purchase of medical and firefighting equipment. Our current levy rate, though, is not projected to sustain our existing operations into the future. We're currently conducting, and I believe Cassandra just sent it out the other day, a survey to analyze and project future needs and understand voter attitudes as we move forward. And we will continue to keep you all informed as we work through the process. Before I ask if you have any questions, I certainly wanted to offer to this group that we have an open house in Newburgh this Saturday at Station 20 from 11 to 2 o'clock. I know our crews would love to see you. There'll be safety booths, things for kids to do, interactions with our firefighters, and you certainly are encouraged and welcome to attend. And also, we are excited to be a partner in the Old Fashioned Festival in Newburgh. Again, this year, we'll be bringing our antique apparatus and participating in the parade. And my final thing is, if anyone knows of any property around 240, we have a need to put in a station in and around that area. That's where our data is pinning that it needs to go. We've been struggling for several years now, trying to find an appropriate property that will work for our response needs. So if you know of any, put the word out. So, thank you.
So I have a question on that.
Sure.
It seems to be our perennial question, but before I get to that, we have been having some confusion issues with ER diversion. And I'm sure you guys have been dealing with that as well. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys manage that in terms of your relationship with the ASA and how the hospitals are working and how they do diversion?
Sure.
Is it a concern for?
Well,
the
it's an
district?
ongoing partnership. I wouldn't call it a concern, but we
Okay.
work really closely, primarily with Newburgh Providence Hospital and what's called their HUC. And that's where their charge nurse is at, who is working with the different floors within the hospital to understand who's coming in, who's going out, what nurse staff is available, what physician staff is available, and what acuity they can handle. They work directly with our battalion chiefs who are down in Newburgh. They're on the phone all the time. What available resources do you have? Are you able to transfer these patients out? Yes, no, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And so I wouldn't say it's a concern. It's been a close partnership. We are in constant communication with upper level management within Providence in particular, to understand where their staffing projections are at, because it's a downstream effect. We all understand that. Our incoming flow coming into the hospital and the outcoming flow from the hospital, each side affects the other. So,
Right.
did that answer your question at all?
Right. Is it something that you discuss in terms of the ASA committee? Is that kind of a hot topic there?
I am not sure what is
Okay.
being discussed, but I can certainly find you the answer. Our EMS chief, Steve Bowie, is intimately involved with that.
Okay.
And I can certainly get back to you.
I think that would be helpful just because we've been experiencing some issues outside of Newburgh, but in the county with diversion. And there's a lot of public confusion, I think, when people find that one hospital is diverting and then the other hospital is diverting, and suddenly we have no hospitals available in Yamhill County. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of community confusion that comes with that. They don't really understand what's happening.
Sure. I will get Steve in contact with you,
Okay,
Yep.
sounds great.
and I'm happy to field any other questions that you might have.
I've got a few questions, but
Sure.
I'll go ahead and finish your questions.
Well, mine was just on the station. So I think we received an email from Chief Weiss 2 months ago that, asked about the Newburgh Rural Fire Station. I think there's some confusion because as Newburgh was going through the urban renewal district conversation, and we were testifying on that, it was pointed out to us that this rural fire station there was a spot for it. It was, moving forward, and we were reassured of that. And now it seems to be that's not the case. So I'm just kind of, if you can walk us through the process of what happened, because that conversation, was that last year or the year before that happened? It just seems like it's a very different scenario now than it was during that conversation. So
Sure. Commissioner Bershauer, are you referring to the spot that is near the heliport? on
Dop
240?
Road.
Dop Road, yeah.
Road, yes. I think we're all really hopeful for Dop Road. Myself and the director of logistics went out and looked at it, worked with the property owner, and what was identified as the place where the property owner felt the station should go, caused our crews to not only would have to exit that portion of where it was to be sited, but then cross the runway and then come down a frontage road and then clear Dop Road, travel to 240 and then clear 240. So when we looked at the total time, when we evaluate crews' performance, we look at their turnout time and then their initial travel time to when they're on main areas of travel where they can actually get up to speed. When we evaluated that, it just wasn't sustainable as far as a long-term meeting what we needed for response. It's excessive. It would have been an excessive time frame to leave that building. And then the amount of infrastructure that was going to be required to be put in to get that up and ready, that was also assessed as probably that wasn't going to be feasible. And that's my recollection of the events of kind of how that went from being great to, I don't think this is our best opportunity.
Okay. The map that was sent by Chief Weiss was pretty specific in terms of the area. If that's just not possible, if there's nobody willing to work with TVFNR, what then happens? Because we're hearing, from some of the Newburgh rural folks that are out, excuse me, in that area, that the city of Yamhill the fire department in the city of Yamhill is responding to those areas. So, how long-term, how does that affect the service levels in rural Newburgh?
Well, we're still responding, as far as I'm aware, into our rural areas. Community may see a mutual aid response from our Yamhill partners. I would venture to say, but probably not a singular response to our customers from Yamhill. We're going to send our units. As far as your question about if we can't find property in there, we're going to have to adjust. What we gave you was our optimal. That's where our data is pointing. This is where this station needs to go to optimize service to that rural area. But if we can't find it and we've tried all the different avenues, we're going to have to adjust. We've had to adjust before and we'll have to adjust again. Potentially, it just wouldn't be as optimal. We gave you the optimal location of where we would really like to have that station.
Okay. And is your leadership going out and meeting with those property owners and talking to them?
Yeah, we have, and we have
Okay.
several brokers on retention, looking constantly, having those conversations as well. Yes, and leadership has been essentially cold calling people to try to get some interest.
Okay. Commissioner Starrett?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chief. Appreciate it. A couple of things regarding I want to go back to the ED diversion. And it hasn't really come up on ASA meetings in so much that Newburgh hasn't really had a seat at the table, if you will. We appreciate the fact that Willamette Valley's CEO is going to be on the ASA, but so any input that you might have in that regard to get Providence at the table to talk about diversion, because it is a concern, especially when our dispatchers are being told we're still on diversion, and then when they call back, Providence says, "Oh, we took ourselves off," but Wycom doesn't know that, or TDFNR doesn't know that. So just a couple of things about the ASA involvement. And then also the substation has been sort of a sticking point for a long time because that was a selling point
Sure.
for those in the rural area, especially when we looked at the response time. So that's obviously still a concern. The other thing is you did mention that Newburgh, the stations there were up for remodel. Is that in the works? Is that planning, or is that just aspirational?
No, it's in the works. We've ganned out our entire bond project, and those are commitments to our community. I think Newburgh is set 2025, 2026 for those remodels to begin.
Okay, and then the other thing about access to a dive team, can you bring us up to speed on where you're at with that?
Yeah, we generally partner for dive. We are a high-risk surface water rescue department. We pulled away from dive probably about 15 years ago now. So generally we, like in Clackamas County, we partner with the Sheriff's Department. Is it my understanding that Yamhill County stood down their portion through Yamhill County Sheriff's for dive? No, you still have dive? No. You never had dive. Okay. So right now we don't provide dive. We provide surface water.
Okay, and you're calling in, where are they calling them in from for that? I know they're coming from, it's not close.
Yeah.
Clackamas.
Clackamas County? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just so everyone is aware though, your water rescue team is staffed 24/7 in Newburgh. And they respond often. They are backed up by a station out of Westland, so it's a code team, but they can have a boat on the water pretty quickly. So
Thank you.
yep.
And then this is something that came up with our discussion around Hampton lumber, but as part of that agreement, we are asking them to fund and form a ropes team through Grand Ron Fire. Is that something that TDFNR has, is a quote unquote ropes team?
Yeah, we have a fully staffed technical rescue team that
Okay.
includes high and low angle.
Gotcha.
rope.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Johnston?
Have one. Under your stats for the EMS calls. Do you know how many of those calls would be for a backup to McMinnville?
I don't have those in front of me. I know we track that, but I don't have them in front of me. I can get them to you.
Yeah, I'd be interested in that number. And they are included in this number. That's what you said, right?
Yeah, these are all Yamhill County responses that are included here.
Okay.
Okay, any further questions for Chief Bale?
No, thank you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank you,
much for
Chief.
having me.
Thank you. Appreciate
Appreciate
it.
the
And Chief
vote.
Olvin,
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
Let me do this right.
Okay. So that concludes our work session. We are now on to department updates and we are being joined by our Sheriff, Tim Svensson. Welcome, Sheriff.
Welcome, Sheriff. It's a nice intro, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Nice segue here.
yeah, very nice. Yeah, so kind of just a dovetail off of what the assistant chief had mentioned. We've, used their dive team on a regular basis. When Newburgh Fire had their own fire department, they actually had a handful of people that were dive certified on there. It does take a very special certification, a lot of training. So we tend to rely heavily on Clackamas County, as the captain said, Lake Oswego Fire, to do the dive rescues. Typically, what we're looking for is the quick on-scene response, which is what TVAD-FNR can provide for us. And then we use the outside entities for more of a rescue mission for moving forward if we need them. So good morning. Thanks for having me here today. This is and it seems like I was just here not too long ago, but this is an opportunity to just kind of give you a quick update on stuff in our office that we haven't talked about at this particular point. For our jail side, you're probably aware that we went through a RFP process for food service. And so we have signed the attempt to award a letter for a new contractor. They're in negotiations and conversations, but if everything goes the way that we anticipate it, sometime in the middle of June, we should be transitioning over to a new food service provider. With that, another service at our jail, which I think you're aware of, we were given verbal notification. I anticipate actual formal written notification anytime today that our medical provider, WellPath, is going to be pulling out of providing medical services to our jail. We're one of 4 counties in the state of Oregon that they're going to pull back from. Coos County, Columbia County, and Umatilla County, as well as us. They're maintaining a couple counties down south, Lane County, and I think it's Jackson County, that they'll continue, and Douglas County, that they'll continue to maintain services. So we're scrambling, trying to identify alternatives. We've had a couple conversations already at this point. The problem with this is that there aren't that many third-party vendors that provide this service. And the ones who are out there that do provide this don't provide it to a small county like ours for capacity wise. So our struggle is if we try to mirror some of the other contracts that our local entities are using, like with Washington and Clackamas County, they use a company called NAFCare. Excellent company. They provide great service, but their price tag is a lot more than what we're paying. They came back and said, yeah, we're willing to help you out, but we need a guaranteed $3 million contract and we want it signed for 5 to 7 years. So we're struggling right now to try to come up with a solution. We've got a couple options that we're looking at with the understanding that ultimately at the end of the day, we need to provide a service to the AICs that are up there. There's a reason why we went this route. I don't and would not advocate necessarily for us to bring it back in-house, but if we don't have a choice, that may be the only option that we have, but we're looking at all the options. With that, we also instituted our new body camera program that has been implemented in both the jail and the patrol division. So now all of our staff have body cameras that they're wearing when they're on duty. We've been able to use them very quickly to assist in some of our cases that we've already had. We've had a pursuit just recently that we're actually reviewing video of this morning where the individual crashed, severe injuries, and just having that video is just making it that much easier for us to review our response, review the incident that occurred to make sure that we're providing the service that we're supposed to. So it's going to be a huge benefit to us. I anticipate as we continue with it moving forward, as we continue to get citizen complaints, I think that's where we're going to see our biggest return on this, is that when the citizen complains, we're going to be able to pull that video pretty quick and determine whether or not there's any validity to it. So on the patrol side, we also implemented recently with the purchase of some new equipment from this current fiscal year's budget. We have now got a decent drone program up and running. We got several different types of drones, different sizes, been able to use those in various areas. We've got new staff that we brought on that came from other entities that were already trained pilots. They've ran programs at their previous agencies, so they were able to build our policy pretty quickly, get the training that we needed to, because if you're going to fly the drone, you have to have certain type of certification through the FAA. And so we've got staff on site that have had the training, that have the certification, that can deploy it. We had an incident the other day in city of Dayton where we needed to deploy the drone. We were actually successful in deploying it and actually entering it into a trailer. Because of the size, we were able to fly it right into the trailer, locate the subject pretty quickly, and not have to put anybody in harm's way. And we're able to end the scenario pretty quickly without any injuries to any of our staff. So it's already paid for itself just in one incident. And so we look forward to being able to deploy that more frequently. Just to give you kind of an idea of kind of what's going on in our office moving into the summer. We talked a little bit about staffing issues that the entire state of Oregon is having. It's not just the retention of individuals. I mean, law enforcement, what we're seeing is we're seeing people who are nowhere near retirement age leaving the profession. We've had a lot of staff in our own office that have done the same. We're also having issues with just getting qualified candidates that want to apply to do the job. So you'll hear a lot within our office where we're talking about staffing. We're concerned about staffing. And it's not necessarily that we can't get people hired. It's that once we get them here, we're constantly short because they're either on vacation, they're out on protected leave, or they're out doing other things, or they're in training, because we're constantly having to get people up and running. But I had the captain put together kind of a synopsis of one particular weekend, because we had a lot of calls, and just over one particular weekend, which we had anywhere between 3 or 4 staff working at any particular time. They started off on one in the middle of the day with a kidnapping and attempted murder in a contract city. That was actual bona fide, decent investigation where they took a lot of time and energy from our detectives, in addition to our patrol staff. Then they had another call later that day in a contract city where the suspected gang members with a loud party had multiple traffic stops where they came through there. And we had a domestic with a firearm with aggravating factors. Male party was later apprehended after fleeing the scene. Same day, 45 minutes later, responded to a motorcycle crash on Spring Hill Road. Rider was taken to OHSU. Later that night, another motorcycle crash in Calkins Lane, where I was taken to with a local hospital with a broken leg. The next day, responded with OSP with a hit and run crash. Driver fled the scene. Our canine tracked and was deployed. And after a track was able to locate the suspect who had multiple warrants. But while they're in the middle of that call is when we had this other incident come in, whether it was a domestic with a firearm, when the suspect was reported armed and threatening suicide by a cop and was barricaded inside their trailer. We had multiple agencies that have to respond to assist us on that. We had to send out the shelter in place via Everbridge with all the staff. We deployed one of the drones. And then of course we were able to use the ballistic shields to assist us in going into once we identified where the suspect was, we were able to go into the trailer and pull the individual out and begin CPR. So I say that because that's just over like a 3-day period where I've got staff that are going from call to call to call to call. And then they go home, they get some sleep, and they come back and they do it all over again. You heard the fire chief talk about, the emphasis on officer wellness and wellness of their staff. Moving through this summer, taking all the issues that we're dealing with the budget out of it, just the mere fact that we have staff that continue to have to come into work because we are having staffing shortages as a whole already, is going to be something that we're going to have to maintain from a management perspective to make sure that our staff are taking care of themselves and have the mental health support that they need going through a tough summer, because the calls for service that we have, we're starting to have the same number of calls. It's just the types of calls we're going to are starting to become significantly more, I don't want to say aggressive, but they're just bigger. The days of us just running from a couple of theft calls to burglaries to this and that, and every once in a while having a big case come up, once maybe every 2 weeks. These are happening daily, where we have these large incidences that are taking a lot of mental health and drain of our staff, and they're not getting much time to reboot. And when we are limited on the number of bodies that we have to pull from, it makes it hard for them to be able to replenish that energy level to be able to come back. So that's something we're going to have to continue maintaining and keeping an eye on as we move forward. And then just real quick, one of the conversations that we've been having internally to try to prepare for the cuts that we may be making in July. We've had our command staff sat down. We talked about a few things, went over it with our staff on our patrol division and our jail division to kind of give them an understanding of kind of what we're looking at moving forward July 1. So July 1, in order for us to make the needed improvements to be able to maintain the 21 staff members in our facility in the jail, the support services division position that we had reclassified from a retirement of our civil deputy, we reclassified it to support services position. The intent was to provide an additional body to help support data entry for CHLs and processing of CHLs, and to help data entry of all of our civil. That particular position is going to be frozen. We're not going to be hiring that position. It's basically been eliminated to have some savings in order to be able to transfer back to the jail. We had a traffic safety deputy position that was a grant funded position from 2017. That position has continued to stay on the books. We've used them for traffic enforcement. They have since recently, within the last year, been taking more calls for service than they have been doing traffic. But that particular position is going to be eliminated as well. So they are going to maintain just rural patrol. And so that his traffic duties, he will no longer be focusing on those. And then in the jail, we had to take the health and safety compliance position, which was also grant funded. We eliminated that one. The 1145 fund that Jessica Beach had talked about having to reduce because of the state funding issues, that position was not going to be able to be absorbed in the jail. So that one will be eliminated. And then we also eliminated a vacant sergeant's position on the floor. And then we had one additional floor deputy that was part of increase in staff that we made a few years ago based off the TLM report. Then that position will also be eliminated. So a total of 6 positions, 4 in the jail, 2 on the patrol side, to accommodate for the balancing of the jail budget to maintain that 21. So what that means for operations in the jail is, with the 21 staff that we have, we had more than 21 for one reason. That's because we need more than 21 deputies to safely operate with the facility, the way that the footprint is designed, how spread out it is, and the type of individuals that we're seeing. The clientele that we're keeping, that we're maintaining, even though the population is roughly around 110, 115 AICs at any given time, that population is the high needs and the high vulnerable population, and it requires a lot of attention and time. So in order for us to maintain the safety of not only the AICs, but also the 21 staff that we have working, what we'll effectively do on July 1 or sometime shortly thereafter is we'll be transitioning the population from the large footprint and basically closing down the restitution center of the facility and relocating all of the AICs into the core of the facility. What that will do is limit the total number of AICs that we'll be able to maintain at any given time. We'll put a cap on how many individuals we bring in. Anything that is over that cap that's not required to be held will be released. And then the restitution center side, which provided the work release, work crew, and some of our programs, that will be in essence shut down so that our staff can concentrate solely on the core part of the facility. We can maintain a population of roughly 115 AICs in the core of our facility with this restructure. It's safer for the AICs and it's safer for the staff. And so we will be transitioning that hopefully sometime after the first of the year, and we'll be reaching out to our local partners when we make that change. So just heads up in case you start hearing from the community on what we're doing in the jail. So that's just a quick overview of what's going on in our world.
So Sheriff, thank you. A couple questions, probably several questions, but with regard to the restitution center, so we've had this discussion multiple times about our work crews and the numbers just dwindling down to almost nothing, right? And that started before this. That was, even maybe pre-COVID pandemic, but definitely impacted by COVID. So why didn't we maybe institute some of these reforms during COVID when that was pretty clear that that was gonna be maintained, not just because of COVID, but also because of, statutory changes and changes to the laws in terms of punishments or whatever, sentencing.
Yeah, so on the restitution center side, in addition to where we house our work crew, which is the smallest population, which is averaging maybe 2 AICs at a time. We also have the dorm setting for our lowest minimum security that are probably within 30 to 60 days of being released. Plus we have our female block, which is FGP. So we continued maintaining that primarily because of our female block and the minimum security side. And we were fully staffed. So the need of having to consolidate and make those changes in the way that the facility is ran, it wasn't as of a priority at that particular point in time. But now that we're going to be less 4 or 5 positions in that facility, we needed to make a decision on now how do we best maintain and operate the facility? And so by eliminating the work crew side, which is already non-existent, and reallocating a handful of the individuals that were in the minimum security side, and then significantly changing the way we handle the female population and reclassifying the way the footprint of our core of the facility, we were able to make that work. So the conversation wasn't had prior just because staffing wise, it was okay. We could continue to maintain that. Having a staff member wandering on that side of the restitution center, managing that small population was okay. But by eliminating those 4 positions, we're in essence taking 1 body per team away, and that's going to significantly impact their workload. And it's better for us to have them all in 1 location.
But in our discussions, we weren't technically eliminating anybody, right? It was a vacant position. So
But
how
the
does,
vacant position that we can't hire? I mean, I had people sitting there waiting for final offers to bring in. So yes, in theory, there was no one laid off, but it's a position that we held vacant because I didn't want to give someone a pink slip 3 months after I hired them. So
okay.
So yeah, the concept is no one's going out the door because they're losing their job, but that was only because we chose not to hire people 6 months ago because we thought that we may be in this position.
Okay. So you just said that because of the shifting now that our jail essentially is maxed out. based on how many people we can house?
Well, we're gonna have our cap at 115. The cap is, we've built in a natural buffer that we have the ability to fudge a little bit on the numbers. We did that intentionally. There's a certain population of our facility that we did not factor into that 115 cap. But with that 115 cap, today's population, we'd be able to maintain today's population. And I would imagine that we're going to be able to maintain our population moving forward, even with that cap, given Senate Bill 48 and some of the other changes. If we see any changes to Senate Bill 48 and how we handle our pretrial population, or if we see a significant increase in sentenced individuals that are sentenced into our facility, then that may change, but I don't necessarily see that coming anytime soon.
Okay, but that's half of our capacity.
Correct.
Okay. I guess I'm struggling with, we have been at half capacity for a while,
Mhm.
especially during COVID. We didn't have bodies in those positions, but we were able to maintain the jail as it is. So why is it now that we're having to contract?
Yeah, so we had bodies in those positions, but we had people retire. And so as they rotated through, probably in the month of February, April-ish time, when we started putting together numbers, we realized that we were going to have a budget issue. I had a handful of positions that are open in the jail that we were moving forward with hiring laterals candidates. And we made the operational decision at that time not to fill those positions with one reason in mind. If we don't get the funding to fund those positions, I don't want to be laying someone off 3 months later who left a really good job at the Department of Corrections or at Washington County to come work for us to get laid off 3 months later. So I don't want to give the impression that we've just had positions open for months and for years, because that's not the case. And yes, we do have a much smaller population that we're dealing with than what we dealt with prior to COVID. But I can tell you that that population and the individuals we're dealing with don't take any less supervision and don't take any less of our time based off the way that our facility runs, because we're a indirect supervised facility. No matter how many bodies you have, you only have X number of deputies that are out walking through the entire facility. And so prior to eliminating those positions, we were at best had 3 floating deputies rotating throughout the facility, 1 in control and 1 in bookings, for a total of 5 staff. With elimination of those positions, you've eliminated 1 body off of that completely. So now I only have 2 that can rotate through, plus 1 in booking and 1 in control. And so by having only 2 instead of 3, we made the operational decision to reduce the restitution center and move everybody into the core, so that those 2 staff can concentrate in the core of the facility and not have to worry about a whole nother division of the jail.
Okay. So we've been hearing that the courts have been having some heartburn over this decision. So can you explain why that is?
My guess is because they are wanting us to have more jail capacity. I mean, they haven't been sentencing people to the jail, so I don't know what their specific heartburn would be. I'm assuming that they're concerned about other programs that we might be running, whether it's work release or work crew. But those programs are pretty much non-existent as it is right now, because people aren't getting sentenced to time in our facility to be able to be eligible for work crew. So they may be upset because that option may not be afforded to them in the near future, but they haven't been taking advantage of it up until this point. So.
Okay. So kind of going back to budget. So during budget discussions, I'm just going to round numbers. It was roughly 500,000 that we were looking for. We allocated 137, 140 and basically said, okay, let's find the rest of it. Is it accurate to say that there's no match to that? There's nothing coming in to backfill that?
For the 137?
Right.
No, it's one of those 6 positions that we eliminated to backfill that 137.
Okay, so we weren't able to find savings anywhere in terms of cash. We're basically eliminating positions in order to get there.
Well, yeah,
Yes.
we did. Yeah, because the numbers and the positions that the sheriff was just talking about was based on the feedback so there was a couple things that happened. One, because we did have a projected ending balance in patrol, those funds were shifted over to the jail. We reduced the number of cuts that were made in the jail. Because there was more positions that were budgeted to be eliminated that weren't fully funded in the jail. So we were able to restore those positions based on the cuts that the sheriff was talking about here. So we had the ending balance in patrol that was shifted over. We had a change in the positions that were being cut, because as an example, like the civil records support position and the sergeant position, those cost savings, those vacancies that were, those were then used to restore actual jail deputy positions back into the budget, in addition to the cost savings and patrol and the 137,000 of the ARPA funds that were shifted over as well. So those together is how we were able to, in version 30, where you see it's now at the 19 deputies in Fund 1041 and the 2 positions that are still within Fund 21. There's a lot of moving pieces, and so you had the revenue that was transferred in, you had cost savings and patrol that was shifted over to the jail, and then a reconfiguration on what positions were cut in those budgets, enabled to restore back to the 21 deputies. Hopefully that made sense. There's a lot of moving pieces and probably need a whiteboard and.
Yeah, the original budget that was entered had 7 positions eliminated in the jail. And then, as Ken said, we took the savings that we had for projected ending balance on patrol, reallocated that to the jail to, in addition to eliminating 2 positions in the patrol division, to make up that those 3 positions. The 137,000, some whatever, would also help offset some of those losses. With that, part of that is we had to give the 168,000 back to the state for the COVID grant. And so that 137 and some change, in essence, offset that 168,000 that we had to give back. And so in order for us to do all of that, we still ended up having to eliminate 4 positions from the budget.
Okay, so is it accurate to say that if all of those positions, those 4 positions, cannot be backfilled, we couldn't reopen restitution? So we can't just fill one of them and suddenly we can go back to full capacity.
Yeah, I mean, my struggle is that I'm looking out for the safety of not only the individuals we're caring for, but our staff. And the 2 different studies that we've had that highlighted what type of staffing levels we should be operating under, all of them said it should be more than the 21. If we, in essence, 21 gives us 1 extra body for 4 teams. So how it works is you have 4 teams. So in essence, 21 split over 4, 3 teams get 5, 1 person gets 6. If you added 3 more positions, then that would get you to 24, 24. My math is right. Which would allow for you to assign 1 additional person to every team. That 1 extra that we've always had, that 21, was just because that was the number that was in the contract. And so we've had that 1 extra person doing other duties, such as the health and safety compliance position, which we funded through a grant for a while. So in essence, if you were able to apply 3 more positions, that would get us to 24 deputies. I would feel comfortable going back to the way we're doing business and just leaving things status quo. But by reducing it down to that 21 and understanding how our facility operates, people take vacation, people are gone sick, people are out on training. Just because you have 21 on paper doesn't mean you always have 21 staff there available to you. And rarely do you have the full team assigned actually working, because someone's always on vacation, someone's always sick. And so that immediately reduces your capacity, which requires us to call in a lot of people on overtime to help cover those shifts.
And those three positions constitute almost $400,000 essentially in terms of budget impact.
Yeah, good round number.
Yeah,
I think the add back request that we had was for 3 positions. Or was it for 4? I think it was for 3, but it was like 450.
there's a lot of variables
Yeah.
with the, because again, it's vacant positions, so it depends if you're hiring laterals
Right.
versus entry level incentives. There's a lot of. So that's why it's really hard to provide that estimate, because it is a bit of a range to determine.
At 450.
And it all depends on onboarding.
Okay.
The other part that I would just share is this is something that our next step in the budget process is scheduled for July 15th. And based on the work that,
June 15th,
what did I say?
July.
Oh, I'm sorry. June 15th.
Don't miss
Thank
it.
you. Yeah. Don't want to miss that timeline. So June 15th, we have the hearing. There's going to be some additional changes that we do need to make to the budget, because based on the work that, working with the sheriff and the entries and the changes that we made to version 30, it did come out that there's some ending balances that are now in version 30, but those ending balances, we're going to need to fully appropriate it, because one, we still have this outstanding question about when and a new collective bargaining agreement is going to come into play, and so we know that there's going to be additional personnel costs associated with that. So we're going to need to make sure that everything's appropriated for next year to ensure that we can cover all the costs for the next fiscal year. So there's a couple $100,000 in any balance between the two based on what the change is. But it's not really any balance. It's also, we're going to need every penny of that potentially to cover whatever roll-ups come into play with that new collective bargaining agreement, if and when that gets settled. Because right now we're already through the first year of what that CBA is supposed to be in place for.
Okay.
And I'm anticipating that all the, I don't know if it's going to get settled this fiscal year. So that's going to have, all the impact is going to be on the next fiscal year, including any retros or anything that were to have gone into effect this fiscal year is going to have an impact on next fiscal year's budget.
Commissioners, any questions for the sheriff?
I have some, but Commissioner, do
I
you
have
have any?
just
Why
one
don't you go
quick
ahead?
one. And it's probably more for Ken, but with the new body cams, are we realizing any savings with CIS? For his liability or anything, or are we just hoping that the rates aren't gonna go up? Which could still be realized as a savings
No, I don't think.
because of the body cams.
I think the body cams are going to help us. They're not going to help us with our premiums.
Yeah.
Or what those rates are going to look like, but it will help us in potential future litigation and helping to lessen our exposure to any claims that are brought against the county. So it doesn't have a direct impact that, CIS hasn't offered any type of discounts or anything for implementing these programs. It's just it's best practice and a direction we're going to hopefully manage and mitigate our future experience.
Are we gonna be able to put a dollar figure to that?
Well, the only thing I could say, we can try to find a way to wrap our head around what that figure might be, but when we have a citizen call in and complain about a deputy's involvement on a traffic stop,
Right.
if there's no video of it, it could take an individual hours, sometimes days and weeks to investigate that, to bring in staff, interview them, talk to witnesses, and try to put together a package to determine whether or not we were in the wrong or the right. With video, it's going to be very quick. It's going to be, okay, what date and time was that? And we get to pull it up.
Here's your video.
We'll pull it and we'll look at it. And if there's no problems whatsoever, we can send that back to the citizen, say, thank you very much. Or we can then investigate it. And if it's on camera, it's gonna be a pretty quick investigation. So I think where we're gonna see from internal is our staff time is going to be better used in other areas within our office and not having to chase down complaints.
And do you think you'll be able to put a dollar figure or an hour savings to that after
It'll be,
a year?
yeah, maybe after a year, but it'll be very rough, but
Yeah,
it could be pretty good guesstimate of how much time we've been able to save in citizen complaints.
I would say though, you're probably transferring some of that to the DA's office and their time in reviewing all of that stuff, so.
Well, on the criminal side, yes,
Yeah.
I mean, they're gonna have a huge workload increase because on every case that we send to them for prosecution, they're now gonna have an additional piece of evidence to review. So yeah, it's
and there
gonna,
was something about a bunch of redactions and stuff that everything had to go through.
yeah,
which
the
cost-
nice part about the software is that they have improved their AI so that you have the ability to go in. It still takes a little bit of staff time, but a lot quicker than it used to be. And you get to identify which faces you want to keep in the video and which ones you want to redact. And then the system will automatically redact it for you. Then you have to go back and review it real quick just to make sure it's redacted appropriately. And then we can send it out that way. The question is who's going to be doing that redaction when the DA's office requests copies of it for discovery? We will do redaction for anything that's released on a records request internally through our office. But what happens to the district attorney's office? We haven't quite narrowed that down. I think we're working on trying to find a way to give them restricted access to the system to be able to do it themselves.
Got it, okay.
But yeah, we'll see.
This might be a Ken question also, but can you go over in other words, there were some ending balance savings. None of those could be used to basically fund a deputy position at this point?
I'm still looking at it. The sheriff and I were on the phone yesterday and talking about it. We're still working on that and we'll be, I think, better prepared to answer that question by the 15th when we come to the
Mhm.
hearing for the deliberation list. It's early. We're still trying to get through the numbers and reach agreement that we're making the same conclusions on where this cost savings is coming from and whether or not it could truly be used to either restore an additional position, or if we need to appropriate it and have it available to cover personnel costs.
So, thank you, Sheriff. Appreciate that. A couple of things. As far as there was an ODOT grant for, was it DUI or distracted driving? And those don't exist anymore?
So we've got a couple different grants that we use. We have grant funding that we get through the Oregon State Sheriff's Association. That's just a pass through from ODOT for overtime to go out and do DUI enforcement, distracted driving, speed, and seatbelt. Those grant opportunities are still there. It's a reimbursement for overtime. So existing staff member goes out, works 10 hours of DUI overtime. They get paid for those 10 hours out of those funds. Then we had a DUI enforcement deputy position that we currently have that is fully funded through ODOT. It was a 3-year grant. That position still is there. We'll continue that position. The traffic position that we ended up taking off the paper, I guess you could say, and just aren't going to hire a replacement of someone who just recently retired. Is the traffic safety one, which was the very first grant that we got back in 2017, which was specific for speed and distracted driving. That position was absorbed into our existing ability over time not because of shortages, as in we don't have enough staff to patrol. It's because we have like 8 bodies that are out on leave or on protected leave or are not available or in training. We had to reassign that individual to actually take rural calls for service. And so his priority has been more of a call taker than it has been going out and doing speed enforcement. So on paper, we're just going to take that position away and permanently assign him back to rural patrol duties. But he's our traffic guy. That's what he does. So in his off time, when he's not responding to calls, he's going to be out there doing traffic enforcement.
So as far as covering the county, covering from one end of the county to the other, what are the deficits coverage wise, knowing we do have contract cities that have deputies manning them in certain areas, but then in other parts of the county, we have nobody. So how are we managing that coverage? What's the deficit? And what's the wish list, if you will, in terms of getting really comprehensive coverage for rural patrol?
For rural patrol. So right now, our rural patrol teams consist of 16 rural deputies. We had 17, which would have been one of those, there was that traffic position. Then we also have the DUI position, which is specialized. So from a rural team perspective, there are, in a perfect world, 4 deputies assigned to that team. The problem is that we have 4 that are out on leave right now, 2 on training, and 3 vacancies that we're trying to fill that are funded. And so even though we have 16, we have close to 7 or 8 that aren't here. And so that puts a strain on our existing patrol. So in a perfect world, you would have at least 20 rural deputies out there running around. That gives you 5 rural deputies per team to pull from. That does not include our detectives division. That does not include our contract cities. That does not include our DUI guy. And what that allows for is that because you inevitably are always going to have at least one person gone from that team, no matter what, for any particular purpose, whether it's on vacation, sick, protected leave of some sort, and or training. And so because they're always going to be gone, if you can always build that team with one additional staff member to help offset that ratio, then that brings you back down to 4 working, which is a good, safe number to work with. When you have a team that's got 4 assigned to it and you always have one gone, now you're down to 3. And so it's one of those hard things in staffing when you look at staffing studies and look at how you do a staffing matrix. I don't like to use the word overhire, but you technically need to hire more staff because you always know that one person's never going to be there.
So sorry.
No, go ahead.
So you are funded for additional rural patrol. You just haven't been able to fill those positions?
Correct. Yeah, we have 3 vacancies right now. And so we've got 2 in backgrounds or in the middle of backgrounds. We just went through another interview process. And so we're just, we're about 3 months out from being able to hire anybody based off our process.
Okay. And so the severity of the crimes in terms of more violence, more drug involvement, more danger to your deputies, we're seeing used to be you could send one deputy out and it was just pretty much road. Now there's more there's more danger for a deputy, and he might need, or she might need, an extra person with them.
Correct.
So, okay, well, I also want to just a credit to your organization, had a chance to talk to Captain Elliott. We were out in Dayton, and also this morning interfaced with your lateral hire, Deputy Hall and Deputy Eubanks, a 20-year veteran. They were responding to a issue in the rural part of the county, and you just appreciate the fact that they take time to talk to people along the way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, no, we have excellent staff that are working here. I can tell you that the salary adjustment that we made 4 years ago did exactly what it was intended to do. It retained good employees, it attracted good employees, and it brought in some good laterals from other entities that live in our community, but we're working other areas. Deputy Hall is a perfect example of that. So yeah, we've got excellent staff. It's just, given the environment right now with law enforcement as a whole, everyone will say we want more bodies. I mean, TVFNR probably would tell you that they could use more bodies. From a management's perspective, it really comes down to when I look at the board and I've got funded 16 positions that I can spread out over 4 teams. And when I look in the jail and I say, oh, I've got 21 funded deputies to cover the entire jail. It's kind of smoke and mirrors, because on paper it looks great, but then when you start dialing in and narrow it down and you take those 16 and now you have 8 of them out on leave or vacant positions for a total of 8, you've in essence cut your rural patrol team in half. And you're going to have that no matter what. And that is the management struggle of how do you manage that and how do you continue to maintain the mental health and awareness and the safety of your staff, whether it's in the facility or on patrol. And it's hard because if you have more bodies to pull from, it eliminates the need to constantly have people come in on off time to maintain. You know, when we're constantly calling people on their days off to come back to work, they never get the break that they need and the separation from the job. And it's going to burn out some of our employees, which is why you're starting to see people who've been in the field for 10 or 11 years that are deciding that they don't want to continue doing this for another 10 years and they're going to go do something else.
Thank you, Sheriff. Well, we're gonna have this discussion on June 15th and also bring up the D word, which is dog control.
I was hoping I could
I got
get
a
the
few more
entire,
We're not gonna talk
Well,
about that today.
I was
was
going to
gonna
talk
say-
about the contract, but
Yes.
we've been hearing that the dog calls that your deputies, patrol deputies are going on are somewhat high or
Yep.
increasing. Is that true?
oh yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we've had our capacity at Homeward Bound has been met for months. We've had the same 3 dogs in there for months. We don't have room at the inn. We've been using Newburgh Friends Animal Shelter for some facilities. We've had in situations and instances come up where we have had no resources to provide to individuals,
Mhm.
and we're having to turn citizens away because we just don't have the resources to do it. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's an issue. And unfortunately, it's being passed on to our patrol division, and our
Mhm.
patrol folks are like, well, what can we do? Then their hands are kind of tied because they don't have any options.
We're working on it.
So out of the 16 patrol positions, if you filled the 3 vacant, you'd have 19 total, or is the 16 include the 3 vacant that you're trying to fill?
Correct.
And those 3 are not part of the cuts that we were talking about. That
Correct.
were unfilled
Right.
positions. Okay.
Correct.
And then on paper, the capacity is 115 for the jail, how we sit now on with the restructuring. And I just wanted clarification with Chair Burshow's question of how many more to go back to where it was? Is it 1 hire or is it 3 hires?
I would say for me personally, to operationally run that facility in a safe manner, we'd need at least 3 additional staff members.
3 hires.
Because that puts us at 24, which allows me to assign 6 deputies to 4 teams.
And then 115 capacity, what's on paper? What's the unofficial capacity?
It's unofficial.
Okay.
I'd be more than happy to tell you what that
Okay,
number
fine.
is offline, but we have built in a good buffer.
Okay.
To make sure that we, if a situation comes that we have an
Taking
individual
care
that
of
we
it.
need to house, that we'll have room
Okay.
for it. Yes.
No. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. Any further questions for the sheriff? All right.
No, thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you very much.
See ya.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see.
Can we take a break, Chair?
Sure.
I
We
gotta
can take a quick, 5 minutes. Let's take a break and come back at 11:35. Okay, so we are back after a quick break. It is 11:39. We will resume the June 1st formal session. And we're picking up at consent. Let's see, consent agenda. Looks like we have a couple items. One is for our intoxicated driver program. And then the other is an adjustment based on some dry rot that was found on the facility. So do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Any further discussion?
None.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Nothing under old business today. Item I1 is consideration of approval of an engagement agreement between Yamhill County and Eileen Akins, Northwest Local Government Legal Advisor LLC for outside counsel assistance with matters relating to county special service districts retroactive to May 25th, 2023. And commissioners, I will move approval of item I1. And just want to sort of point out that this is part of that due process that former Commissioner Gex was talking about earlier, that I think is very important for the board to engage in before we make some pretty significant decisions. So if there's further discussion, questions? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. Great, thank you. Motion passes. Item I2, discussion of AOC survey. And this is something that I added on as the District 6 chair, which encompasses Polk, Marion, and Yamhill County. This is a survey that AOC is asking for us to respond to as a county by, I think it's next Wednesday. There's no real, I guess, good way to do this other than just to kind of go through it. Go through it quickly, because we're gonna have to answer the questions and then submit. So some counties are having, I know Polk County, the county administrator is filling it out for the commissioners, but they're all sort of individually weighing in, which I think is, you could get pretty lengthy on your survey. So I think we just kind of run through it real quick and see if there's any high level thoughts on, responses or anything to add.
Chair, I just want to add that back in March, I'm on the budget committee and the finance committee, and we did discuss this in terms of what do we do about this due structure.
Right.
And there was a lot of discussion about freezing the rates for all counties at the 2023 level, and then just a 5% increase to each individual county. One of the concerns I've had all along is obviously the big dogs, the Washington County and the Multnomah County, they do pay the preponderance of the dues. And so sometimes when they're not happy with the outcome, there tends to be, of various votes or processes, there tends to be sort of a, just kind of looking at them as the ones who are going to be making some decisions. So I've had some concerns about that. That being said, they are, if you're going by population, I don't know that there's any other way to structure these.
Yeah, so if you see on the beginning of the survey, they kind of go over it, which is there's a base fee and then there's a fee based on percentage of population and then also percentage of assessed value. I think there's a lot of heartburn over the assessed value component of that. So that was where I was going is let's get rid of the assessed value nonsense and just make it, a base fee with a percentage of population increments. Some of the other feedback that I've had with other commissioners in our district is that AOC seems to be kind of not operating like a business would, but pushing and pushing and spending beyond the means of what the dues bring in. And, unfortunately, I've seen some pretty major members of statewide association leave those associations because of this model where they're paying a lot into this service as sort of a statewide lobbyist group, and the group has to juggle the interests of very, very different members, and you sort of dilute the effectiveness or the point of having a lobbyist, right? I mean, essentially, it's what they're doing in the legislative session. So a lot of frustration around that. I was really shocked when I came in as a commissioner to find out they were unionized. I'm not sure when that happened, but that just seems to be pushing these the cost drivers in the fact that we're now in union bargaining with AOC members, and it's really, really upsetting some of the member counties. So a lot of frustration all around. I think this is really just kind of trying to get at what do we want to see change with the dues structure, how they assess the dues. So if we go through, I just think we go through this really, really quickly. Number one is, does your county believe the factors in the current dues formula is equitable or are equitable? I would say, I prefer the freeze, getting rid of the assessed value component of it, but I prefer the freeze, and then everybody's goes up by, I would say, less than 5%, but that's just kind of where I'm going, which would naturally eliminate the cap. So if Multnomah County is pushing up against that cap, eliminate the cap, because everybody else's is going up by 3 to 5%, and they ought to have some skin in the game there. So that was my response, is eliminate the cap for the larger counties, eliminate assessed value component, and freeze, and then increase by something that will help us in terms of budgeting for this part of our expenses.
One of the things I did not appreciate was that applying a simple 5% increase, and that was the percentage. It didn't give us a whole lot of any other options for anything but 5% increase. So this would be something that we would have to factor in every single budget cycle.
Mhm.
And to your point, one of the things I've been saying all along is that a lot of times the rural counties, our positions do not align on any of the proposed legislation. So we wind up having these push me, pull you type of discussions. And we do, I would imagine, fit in more with the Eastern Oregon Association of Counties, those types of things. But because we're required to belong to this organization as part of our insurance coverage, we're pretty much held hostage. And I don't know that it's an effective lobbying tool when we're all going in different directions. So I don't know where to go with that, other than to say, some of the questions here, the way they're posed, don't give us a whole lot of any options other than A or B.
Right.
Does anybody know why it went up 7.5% last year? Or what the reasoning was?
Personnel.
Well,
Just all
all
personnel.
Yeah.
Wasn't the new building?
No, actually, that supposedly saved money because the former building was
Paying rent or?
a huge building, and now they're in smaller quarters. But still.
Okay, so I'll kind of, I'll answer no, and then I'll provide some specifics on number one. How would you change the dues formula to make it more equitable? We've touched on that. I also added to that one, address rising personnel costs. Does your county believe the current formula should be used moving forward? We've said, no, we want these changes. Does your county agree that a base fee should be part of the formula? Generally, yes. Does your county agree that a tiered base fee set by population should be utilized? Generally, yes. Does your county agree with the current population levels used to set the tiered base fee? This one I have a little bit of heartburn over because we are just over that 100,000. So, that's a significant $5,000 increase because we now fall into the 200,000 level. So perhaps we could suggest setting some smaller increments or more of them might be more fair. Does your county agree that population should be a factor in determining a county's dues? Generally, yes. Does your county agree that assessed value should be considered?
No.
I would say no. That just is all over the map in terms of how counties are sitting for that.
Which measure 50 plays a huge role into that
Yeah.
too, just because of the cap at 3%.
Yeah.
So then it'd be mostly newer growth happening in your
Mhm.
county, which would make your dues more expensive.
Is there anything your county would like to see change with the current dues formula? I marked the base fee tiers and then the maximum assessment or cap
Mhm.
and the use of assessed value. Would your county prefer to follow the current dues formula or to freeze the dues and then increase by a set amount annually? I marked the second one, if that's acceptable. Does your county agree that the minimum assessment required to be a member of AOC should not be less than 10,300? I'm assuming that's the bottom tier. You would go back. Yes, that's the bottom tier. I think that's fine. We're
Although
not
if you're gonna
there.
have the argument that the bigger counties shouldn't be capped, and then lower ones shouldn't be.
Lowered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
To be fair.
So that's a yes. And then does your county agree that the maximum assessment required should not be more than 20 times of the base fee? No, we want to remove the cap based on the freezing structure. And then how should dues be reallocated if a member does not pay or renew their membership? This is me. I marked the third one that funds should be allocated from the reserve and not redistributed to other people, other counties for non-payment. They then should recalculate and reduce their budget based on losing members. How would you describe the value you receive from AOC?
Insurance coverage.
Yep. Pros are insurance has obvious value to us. The education and perhaps the networking value of forcing us to go to county college.
I've learned a few things.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting, but I paid for that too, so.
You shouldn't have paid.
No, well, yes, that's a side subject, but it's being paid for. It's not like
it's
they're
an
offering it
additional-
free.
Right,
so.
you have to pay for that.
Although I will say that I think the value you're getting is probably nominal compared to what was paid. I mean, the value is pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, I
in terms
think
of-
I only paid it's $450 or $600. I have to go look that up.
That should have come out of our budget, not his pocket.
Yeah. Well, you
Yeah,
have.
it
to
was
submit that.
before it was in December, so
Yeah.
I know.
In terms of the less optimal parts, I think the lobbying effort is, marginal. And that goes hand in hand with the pressure of these large metro counties to influence how smaller counties or rural counties are impacted by legislation. So,
Mhm.
do you feel that your annual county
If I
due-
could just add, but some of the other things, just knowing as being a member of some of the affiliates, there is some benefit with that, because whether it's OACCD, the corrections directors, that's a really active group. that-
affiliate groups.
That, especially for the funding and the state grant and aid and, you know, that's Jessica belongs to. I know that group has had some benefit. I know that I can speak for the county administrators group. There's some other additional benefits that I would just,
Okay.
you know, add, even though it's not necessarily, we pay separate dues. It's not part of this due structure, but there is some benefit with that relationship and with the affiliates.
So the clerks. And is county councils not included in a
Mm-mm.
separate, they're their own?
They're not even an affiliate, I think.
Yeah, it used to be a little bit more closely aligned with AOC when Rob Bavette was there.
Mhm.
But since he's left, and I don't believe they've replaced him, there's less of a direct connection with the County Council Association, except that AOC does still help organize conferences and events and things like that. But there was more of a direct line to lobbying and updates on what AOC was doing during legislative sessions that we don't seem to be getting as much of anymore. But yeah, we also pay separate dues for that association as well.
Right. So.
Okay,
sorry, just
that's a
wanted
good
to-
point. Do you feel that your annual county dues assessment relative to the benefit you receive is too high, just right, or too low?
That's a lot of money. That's a big check every year.
Yeah.
And we're not even paying for the other assessments that we used to pay additional. Didn't we pay for veterans? We paid for forest trust land.
Well, that was one of the restructuring
Right.
Yeah.
parts of it. I still think there's not forest trust lands, it's the,
OTC.
It's the, not forest trust lands. It's the,
I went back and watched the video of last year. I think it was the Council
Council
of Forest
Oh.
Trust Land or something, but we had
Yeah.
to kind of fight to get that money back.
yeah. Mhm.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so there's a couple and they rolled up, you know, with this revised due structure, it's now in part of the. And I will say that we did see an increase last time because it'd been so long since they updated the dues. We were one of the few counties that. Everyone else, it was an incremental increase when they went to this new structure. And because they hadn't updated in quite some time, we were actually in the top, like 1 or 2% as far as the increase that we saw in the dues. And because this formula and having a population and total assessed value, we moved up quite a
Yeah.
bit on the list.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
So,
So. I mean, we can mark too high. I want to make sure that we're providing constructive feedback with that.
I mean, just from last year, there's $6,000 increase, so would feel comfortable saying it's too high.
Okay,
If I did my math right.
okay. And some of the same, frustrations below.
Do we, you have to pay these dues to have access to CIS, or is CIS kind of its own separate deal where you can go get?
no, because CIS, the formation of that insurance pool came out of League of Oregon Cities and AOC. That's how the original CIS formed, was from these two organizations. So as part of the bylaws and the requirements, in order to participate in CIS, you have to be a current member of AOC. So,
But we also pay for CIS and we pay quite a bit.
Right.
yeah.
And
For
as
CIS.
more, as they continue to push us more and more to self-insured, then we're gonna have a way different conversation about paying dues. If insurance is the biggest reason we're.
that's
paying
why,
dues.
a good example is a certain county who has recently opted out of their self-insured. They're one of the larger counties that are self-insured. So, and this isn't the first time they've opted out, so they have that ability because they're not tied to CIS insurance.
Right.
Mhm. So this just adds to the premium of our insurance premium is what this does.
If you want to look at it
And
that
that's all-
way,
That's the way to look at it.
other than what Ken said, the kind of extracurricular with Jessica.
Right,
Yeah.
but you
Mhm.
pay for that.
Right. Oh, okay.
Can you belong to those without belonging to AOC?
That was a whole discussion last year at the conference. Yes.
The administrators,
Yeah, that was, yeah.
I remember that. I forgot.
It's frowned upon.
Well,
It is frowned upon. I think, I don't know, I know it's come up in discussion for other affiliates, but it really seemed to be the most contention and the most vigorous discussion was with the county administrators. So,
it was a turf war, actually.
yeah, I was just an innocent bystander.
Mhm.
Okay, so the value we receive from our AOC membership is removing CIS out of it is arguably less than the cost of the dues. Is your county's annual membership fee equal to the value you receive? I think we just answered that.
Mhm.
Let's see. How much less do you feel you should pay in dues for the current benefits and services you receive?
Is that what it says?
Yes, I picked the middle of the road, 21 to 30% less. Again, just, kind of all of the reasons we've talked about. AOC membership is a good value for the price, yes or no?
Well, I guess based on the answer from the last two would be no, if you're being very definite about it.
What is an acceptable annual increase for AOC dues revenue to maintain current service levels? I put less than 5%. What is an acceptable annual increase for individual county dues assessments based on the value you receive? Oh, I see. Number 6 was dues revenue increasing versus county assessments increasing, both less than 5%. What can AOC do to improve the value of your membership?
One of the things it doesn't go anywhere because I don't know that it can go anywhere under the current structure of the organization, is that we really need to have more of an eye towards the needs of the rural counties and the urban counties, and the never the twain shall meet, and just we're never going to get there.
Yeah. I had that as well. I also think that the organization places a lot of expectations on commissioners to actually make the association function the way it should, which is arguably also a full-time job on top of what we already do as commissioners. I mean, if you look at, the role that the president plays and the vice president, they are constantly doing this. They're working 2 full-time jobs. So it's a little bit odd in the way it's structured. And arguably we are part of this because we don't have time to babysit what's going on in Salem all of the time. So that's one of my frustrations, is just the endless meetings and constant committees and this and that. And it's all on top of everything we do as commissioners in our county. It gets to be a bit much. And so then you ask, well, what am I paying for? I'm paying into something that is expecting me to work another job on top of this for the benefit of the counties across the state. It's a little frustrating. But that's how it's set up. So. And of course, we prioritize our counties first. So, if there's strain like there was during COVID or during the wildfires, AOC just kind of takes a back seat. And then arguably we're not getting the full benefit. So I also think that one idea would be to operate it more like a business. Commissioner Pope and I talked about this a little bit, but having a cafeteria menu of services might get us a little closer to operating like a business, where counties can say, we really don't want to do that. We don't want to be involved in that, but we need this service. So that's perhaps a way. what one thing could AOC do that would ensure you renew your membership, continue to provide CIS coverage? Are there any other benefits that you would pay more for to receive from AOC? Some of this has been talked about, but the grant writing piece, they had sort of touched on it a little bit, but to have counties, especially smaller counties, be able to access a fee for service grant writing avenue or however they would structure it, that would be extremely beneficial. So,
Well, Gina did say that she encouraged the counties to get in touch with Global. I contacted Global. So thinking in terms of what's the model for it to be less expensive for the county to do grants.
Mhm.
And then contracting out, looking at that number. And I think there would be some value there and something to look at. So I don't know what Global's capacity is. And if AOC is using up the majority of that time, because they did spend quite a bit of money on that
Mhm.
contract.
yeah,
How much of it do we get to access?
right. So that component could be very beneficial if they were able to connect smaller counties with that. Anything else to add to those? No? Are we having technical issues? Audio issues? Okay. Let's see. What funds do you utilize to pay your AOC membership dues? Which of the following best describes your county? I would say rural and suburban. What is the annual property tax revenue for your county? Some of these, I think, Ken can sort of fill in the details of what they want here. Yeah, going through to the last one. Okay, so I will put this all together into one response and just kind of pass it over Ken's desk before it goes out. And then we'll get that up. Let's see. Okay. We don't have to vote to approve it. Okay. Yeah, consensus. All right. Okay, so that brings us to the end of other business. Item J is public hearings, nothing today. Item K, announcements. I have a few quick ones. We participated in the Rural Continuum of Care House Bill 5019 fund discussion. Was it yesterday? Yesterday. For the $26 million. I think that the consensus, at least in our region, we are in region 5, which is Clatsop, Columbia, Tillamook, and Yamhill. Is that we are really kind of sick of the red tape process and we know what to do as counties. And so just tell us what to expect in terms of funding and we will line up the grant applications and get those in. So I think that message came through loud and clear. Let's hope. So, but there's, in terms of how they're going to divvy up the funding, it wasn't super clear. They have a regional distribution percentage, which I'm assuming will apply to every region. But then they also have what they call a target percentage, which is probably projects that are more, quote unquote, shovel ready. They are going to continue to use the point in time counts, but those are problematic. We don't have one for last year. And they also don't really make much sense in terms of funding because we've seen other counties who got a lot of funding. They have seen their numbers go down drastically. So still lots of questions. However, the decisions on the money are going to be made in the next 2 weeks by June 16th. So this is a very quickly developing process. And if we receive money, it has to be spent by June 30th of 2025, or if any entity in our county receives money. So we're still watching that. They have a follow-up. I think there's a second one.
Yeah,
Second
going on right now.
going on right now. Okay.
So
So hopefully we see some more specifics from that. I did email the director after our meeting and said, okay, just give us the baseline here. Let's not get mired in the red tape. Let's go ahead.
Before you change subject,
Yeah.
I think they said they were going to take the point of time 2023 numbers because they just received those.
Yeah, and I don't think we've gotten those.
We
back.
haven't, they knew they had them
Mhm.
Well, the
and they
other,
were going to use those,
well, yeah, well, they keep going back to that.
right?
To that sort of the baseline number there, but I think hopefully we're able to dissuade them from that local planning group concept where we're just saying,
Right.
listen,
Because
let's just cut to the chase. How much do we have? And then let's just get it to our community partners.
Right.
Everybody was clear on that.
not that I should be like
Right.
surprised at all, but it was very interesting listening to all that where the counties are just like sitting here like, what are you guys doing? We have all shovel ready projects. We already have all this in place for the last umpteen years and you guys are acting like nothing's ever happened before and we're trying to create, reinvent the wheel here.
Yeah.
You could sense the frustration in
Oh,
the
yeah.
nicest
Oh, they
way
got it.
possible.
Yeah, they
And
got it.
I think they got it, but it's just like,
Government at its best.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to move quickly because we still have our executive session, but the second item I want to bring up is an email that we received from Director, the CEO of the hospital, Michael Mulkey, to our sheriff and kind of the sheriff's team. It was a letter of gratitude. But it also, apparently there used to be an arrangement with the hospital where sheriff's deputies, if they were on duty, could come in and get a cup of coffee or get a hot meal in the cafeteria in the hospital. And so that was discussed in past meetings, in the past, month or so, and Director Mulkey is bringing that back. So I just want to read this really quick. It's an invitation to our law enforcement officers, our sheriff's deputies. But it says, I'm writing on behalf of the entire Willamette Valley Medical Center to express our heartfelt gratitude for your unwavering dedication and commitment to keeping our community safe. Your service and sacrifice have not gone unnoticed, and we want to take this opportunity to show our appreciation. I hope this message finds you in good health and high spirits. The Yamhill County Sheriff's Office and its deputies have been an invaluable asset to our community, ensuring the safety and security of its residents day and night. Your tireless efforts, professionalism, and selflessness are truly commendable. We recognize the immense challenges you face daily, yet you persevere with unwavering courage and integrity. Persevere, not preserve. Your commitment to upholding the law and protecting our community inspires us all. To demonstrate our gratitude, Willamette Valley Medical Center would be honored to offer breakfast and coffee for all of our community's law enforcement officers. This small gesture of appreciation can provide respite and fuel to continue your important work, especially during those early mornings and long shifts. And then it just says we're grateful for the strong partnership with the county. So I wanted to make sure our deputies got that message that they are welcome in the hospital anytime, and grab a hot meal and a coffee, and that he's working to rebuild those community relationships. So very, very great to see that. The final announcement that I have is I participated in the Department of Energy Facility Siting Council meeting this morning. It's a statewide group that basically cites energy facilities throughout the state. It's one avenue to do that. And some interesting conversations there, obviously pertinent to Yamhill County because we have cited solar facilities before and currently have, a couple of somewhat controversial ones. But some of the statistics were kind of fascinating. One of I want to touch on is that as of Senate Bill 100, when Senate Bill 100 was passed, to now, we still have 99.6% of the land that was deemed exclusive farm use back when Senate Bill 100 passed is still exclusive farm use. So in the context of did it work? Yes, it's clearly working. We have preserved most of the exclusive farm use land throughout the state. However, the largest driver of the changeover from EFU to some other use is these commercial facilities or solar facilities. So kind of an interesting point there. I think that's about it for me. Any announcements to add?
I did get to spend some time at the American Legion in Sheridan yesterday with the county's veteran peer specialist, Gary Warnock, and got to visit with the city manager and the mayor, members of the city council and the chamber, and talking about the significant, and the food bank manager, talking about the significant issues that our veterans face and the homeless issues, especially that veterans are facing in the West Valley. Also talking about the building itself being a support for the community and some of the concerns about the uptick in the number of people who are coming for food at the Grand Cheromina Food Bank. So there's a lot of need in the West Valley, but there's also a lot of excitement about revitalization, about their parks, and about their economic development. So I'm looking forward to our economic development director, Joya Goodrum, being able to interface with the various chambers, especially in the West Valley.
Thank you. Any announcements?
Yes. Open position on the Road Improvement Advisory Committee. And they posted it online under the contact and then the volunteer tab. And when I was on it this morning, I'm like, I just as well update on everything else that's on there. So you got SWAC, Solid Waste Advisory Committee Board has one citizen position open. ASA still shows one citizen position open. I don't know
Yeah.
if is that right? Okay.
Mhm.
Local Public Safety Coordinating Council has 4 positions open, 1 city mayor, councilor, city manager, or city rep. WOU Criminal Justice Program rep and a lay member position.
I think we're working on filling a couple of those.
Okay. Cove Orchard Sewer Service, 2 citizen positions are open. Park and Rec still has 3 citizen position open, which they should be scheduled to have, I think, 2 interviews coming up at next Parks Board.
Great.
So that'll be good. Road Improvement has 1, Mental Health and Developmental Disabilities Advisory Committee, 2 citizen positions open. Planning Commission, 2 citizen positions open. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you.
Okay, any further announcements? All right. There's nothing else for the good of the order. We will adjourn our June 1st formal session. It is 12:16. Thank you.